You know how cottage pie and shepherd's pie are essentially the same dish? There's just one key difference. One is made with minced beef and one is made with minced lamb. And despite having almost identical ingredients, they still manage to have their own distinct flavours. It's a similar story with the Citroën C5 Aircross and Peugeot 3008. Most of the ingredients within are pretty much identical, and that's because both Citroën and Peugeot are part of the same manufacturing group known as Stellantis. While both cars share the same engine range, platform, countless parts and various bits of technology, they combine together to give two very different flavours. Question is, which one's tastier? Which one is more of a feast for the eyes will depend entirely on the person looking, and to our eyes, both of these mid-size SUVs are very smart. The Citroën has recently been facelifted with more conventional one-piece designs for the headlights and grille, plus more chiselled taillights. Meanwhile, the Peugeot has long been considered one of the most stylish cars in its class, with some really interesting design touches such as the frameless grille and the vertical daytime running lights. This sense of style is a huge part of why cars like these are so popular with family car buyers. Another part is the fact they combine this with practicality and versatility. And if you look at the cars side by side, you'd swear the Citroën was bigger. And the official dimensions support that, but not by as much as you might think. And does this bigger space actually amount to being more practical? In the case of the two particular cars we have here, no. The C5's boot is a handy square shape, but with 460 litres of space, it's by no means the biggest in the class. And as you can probably see, the 520 litres you get in the Peugeot makes it a good bit roomier for luggage space. But that's not the full story here, because what we've got today is a standard petrol version of the 3008 and a plug-in hybrid version of the Citroën. More on why we've done that later on. And that's why that boot is smaller, because it needs somewhere to house the batteries and other hybrid equipment. Now, if you compare like for like, and both are non-hybrid cars, the Citroën has a boot which is bigger by 60 litres. And if you are comparing both hybrid cars, hybrid versions of these cars, then again, the space in the Citroën is 60 litres bigger. The Citroën also has the edge for versatility. Both cars have rear seats that fold down to help you carry bigger loads, but in the Citroën, they fold down in 3 portions rather than just 2 in the Peugeot. And that gives you more choice over how you arrange your load and your passengers. These rear seats in the Citroën have another party piece because they slide backwards and forwards. So if you slide them all the way forwards, you create more luggage space. And if you slide them all the way back, there's more legroom. Although in this car, they're not particularly useful because when they're all the way back, legroom is just about adequate. And when they're all the way forwards, well, it's not even adequate. It does have a saving grace though. When carrying 3 in the back, it is reasonably comfortable because there are 3 separate seats and a flat floor. No such clever seat slidiness in the back of the Peugeot. However, it does get the important bit right in that it is roomy. In fact, it is roomier than the Citroën, even with the seats slid back into their furthest position. The middle seat is more narrow than the outer seats. However, it does have a flat floor, just like the Citroën. Jump up front in the Peugeot, and the first thing that you notice is how classy it feels. The design is clean and modern, while the various materials and finishes on display feel posh and tactile. All very lovely. You'll also find Peugeot's trademark driving position, where you get a teeny tiny steering wheel and you look at the instruments over it rather than through it. It doesn't feel quite as odd as it does in other Peugeots, but it does have an adjustable steering wheel, which you just kind of wish it came a bit closer. And I know you might be thinking, well, your seat's really far away, Rebecca. But even if I put my seat in the right position, I just want that steering wheel a bit closer. Speaking of instruments, they're provided via this 12.3-inch digital display, which looks good and is configurable in a variety of ways. Entry-level 3008s get an 8-inch touchscreen infotainment system, and all others get a 10-inch touchscreen infotainment system, and that includes sat-nav and voice control. The graphics are swift and responsive, screen sensitivity is pretty good, and these handy shortcut buttons help you find your way around. But it's also true that some functions are tucked away in some rather odd places. It's also slightly annoying that there are no separate aircon controls, meaning you have to fiddle around with the screen whenever you want to adjust the cabin temperature. Jump in the front of the Citroën and you'll find the same instrument screen and infotainment system as you find in the Peugeot. And that is a very good example of the technology sharing that we spoke about earlier. And it works in exactly the same way, so we won't go into how it works again. The driving position is rather more conventional than the Peugeot's, if rather upright, and there's plenty of adjustment, even if again you might wish the steering wheel came a little closer to you. The big difference comes in the area of perceived quality. It's fine, and there are some thoughtful touches and finishes on display, but there's also some materials which are less impressive. And compared with the Peugeot, it's a little plain and less classy. You'll remember us saying earlier that we've got the plug-in hybrid version of this Citroën C5 Aircross, so we'll start with that aspect. We've got a 1.6 litre turbocharged petrol engine, which has 178 brake horsepower, and then an electric motor topping that up to a combined output of 222 brake horsepower, which is quite a healthy number. Official WLTP figures suggest that you can travel up to 38 miles on electric power alone if you start with a full battery, and when doing so you waft around appealingly quietly, and the effortless torque of the electric motor means there's always a strong response to any press of the accelerator. When the petrol engine is called into action, it is quite smooth and unobtrusive. In fact, the car can juggle its power sources in a rather seamless way. You're never left feeling like you're short of power, and official fuel economy figures state that it will do up to 222 miles per gallon. Where's the downside? Unfortunately, the downside lies in the real world, as that economy figure comes from laboratory tests that are unrealistically flattering to plug-in hybrids. Yes, if you keep your battery charged up and your journey's short, rolling around exclusively on electric power for the vast majority of the time, your fuel bills will be minuscule. However, when your battery runs dry, you'll be driving around a big heavy car weighted down with big heavy batteries being powered by a thirsty petrol engine, and you'll be munching your way through unleaded at a rate of knots. You can feel the car's bulk in other ways too, and that applies whether you're driving a PHEV or a regular Aircross. You can feel the weight moving around as you turn, you need to give the brakes a good old shove when pulling up, and the car generally just feels a bit clumsy and unwieldy as it moves down the road. The steering is quite slow and very light. In fact, there's hardly any resistance there at all, which is not particularly confidence inspiring, nor is the body roll in the corners as you go around corners and you just lean over quite a lot. That's entirely forgivable if it results in a comfortable ride. This is a family car after all, and on that score, the news is reasonably good. Put the car on the motorway and it's absolutely superb. The compliant suspension soaks up every bump the road can throw at it, and the car stays incredibly quiet and peaceful. At urban speeds though, you really do feel the road beneath you, and if the road is particularly bad, things can get quite clunky and unsettled. Despite the mechanical similarity between our two cars, the Peugeot is a very different kettle of fish out on the road. Its ride isn't as smooth as the Citroën's, especially out on the motorway where you can feel the ripples, bumps and expansion points. The stiffer suspension does make for a slightly firmer ride in town too. However, the thing is that bumps and potholes don't actually unsettle the car any more than they do in the Citroën, so in urban environments the Peugeot is actually no less comfortable. Where that firmer suspension pays dividends is around corners. The Peugeot feels sharper, livelier and more agile than the Citroën. It also hides its weight rather well, so it feels smaller and lighter. Is it what you'd call fun? Well, that might be pushing it a bit because you don't get much feel through the steering. Having said that, the weighting is pretty decent, and although the steering is actually quite slow, the tiny steering wheel gives the illusion that it's quicker and more responsive than it really is. So in terms of ride and handling, the Peugeot is the more polished of the pair, but does that also extend to the drivetrains? Well, the Citroën that we're testing has got the plug-in hybrid, and the Peugeot, meanwhile, has a 1.2 litre PureTech engine, which is a 1.2 litre turbocharged petrol engine, giving 128 horsepower. Seems like a bit of a mismatch, but we've done this very deliberately because the fact is that you can have either powertrain in either car. And so we wanted to tell you not only which car is the best of the two, but which engine option is best to have in it. Now, there's no denying that the PureTech is not as fast as the plug-in hybrid. You also don't get that lovely, quiet, smooth running that you get from an electric motor. And there's no swelling of instant torque that you get that helps you effortlessly pull away in a plug-in hybrid. However, that doesn't stop the PureTech from being a cracking little engine in its own right. It's enormously punchy considering both its diminutive size and the size of the car it has to haul around. It never feels underpowered or out of its depth, and you never have to overwork it to be served up with willing performance. All that, and it's smooth and quiet as well. The main thing is that choosing this entry-level engine will save you many thousands of pounds in the purchase price. And when the entry-level engine is so good, that's definitely worth doing. Granted, choosing the hybrid could well be worth it financially if you're one of a select few, such as a company car driver looking to make some tax savings, or if your driving habits are such that you can make the most of the hybrid system. If that's not you, however, then you're probably better off with the PureTech. For us in this test, it's the 3008 that gets the nod. Both of our cars are practical, comfortable, refined, well-equipped and strong on safety. The Peugeot, though, is a little bit more roomy, it's more sophisticated and refined to drive, and it has a better quality interior cabin. Now, the Citroën is a couple of grand less if you compare like for like, so if you did go for that, we wouldn't blame you. Either way, you're going to get a very likeable family car. Thank you so much for watching this Car Gurus UK video review, and please do subscribe to our channel for lots more great content. And if you're shopping for your next car, head over to cargurus.co.uk to find it. And using our super clever pricing technology, we'll even let you know whether the dealer selling it is giving you a good price or not.